Hello, everyone. There is passing the boards, and then there's walking into the boards wanting to leave with no doubt. Today's guest had a number in mind, 800. And not because every future clinician needs a perfect score, not because a number defines whether you'll become a great PT or a PTA, but because the way that you prepare when you're aiming for mastery can change the way that you learn and maybe even the way that you practice. Our guest today is only 21 years old, is already working as a physical therapist assistant across outpatient, inpatient, and acute care settings. And at the same time, he's a first year PT student at the same time. All of this. I don't know how you're doing it. So yes, we're going to have to talk about how in the world that, you balance being a clinician and a full-time student at the same time. We're also going to dig into active recall, practice exams, your 80-20 rule of board preparation, work-life study balance, and the question that some PTAs eventually ask themselves, which is, do I go back for DPT? And underneath all of that is another story. He is a first-generation college student who has thought intentionally about the return on his education and is now building the next stage of his career while already treating patients. He is a PTA plus an SPT all the way from Arkansas. This is Dillinger Carr. Welcome to the show, Dillinger.
Hey, hey.
Yes.
Good to be
Hey,
here.
before we get started, I have to do a quick shout out to our educational partner, MedBridge. If you are looking for high quality continuing education, patient education resources, and clinical tools to help you become an even better therapist, MedBridge has become one of my favorite resources. Visit medbridge.com/PTA plus podcast and use promo code PTA PTA plus to save on your subscription today. So now let's go ahead and just get right into this conversation. Dillinger, 800.
Yes, ma'am.
Well done. Well
Uh,
done.
I think it's interesting the way, it got put out there. To start, I guess at the beginning, my main goal with the NPTE was, of course, to pass it. And then I have and do still have, because I'm going back to the same school, still work with those professors, but had amazing instructors and professors. And they were like, listen, like, you could, based off your test scores, make an 800. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll see what I can do. And so, after my spring semester at PTA school, looking at boards in July, I was like, okay, like, let's see what I can do to shape myself up to get an 800. And so it took a lot of, um, we'll get into more of it later, but looking at my study habits and stuff like that and seeing what I needed to do to shape up to that. So taking a lot of practice exams, going through flashcards, all this stuff. Um, Anyways, and then after doing that, it wasn't until much later that the story got published. So I was in the clinic. I got into the clinic one day, and some patients were like, "I saw you on my Facebook feed," and I was
Oh, yeah.
like, "Oh boy, what's going on?" And so it was really cool having that come out. Well, we'll get into it later more again, but I think everyone's goal as a PTA or PT student when passing the board should be passing, but I think it's easier than some people think to get an 800. I don't think it's this
Hmm,
impossible feat, if that makes
okay.
sense.
Yeah. Well, let's break this down a little bit. So initially, yeah, pass the boards, right? Like that's the goal of everybody, right? And really as an educator, that's our goal too for our students. Like our goal is that you are going to be successful. That's why we spend so much time in our labs and in our classrooms and through clinical experiences. Like nobody wants to see students get all the way through and then not be successful. And that's why, there are such strict guidelines and grading schemes and all of that. Like PTA educators and PT educators, we want our students to be successful. Like there's nobody that's out there that's trying to like not make students successful in the end with all of this. And your program has to speak to that too, so like
Yes.
we are responsible as programs to release our data to the public. We're responsible to release our data to our accrediting body. So there's nothing good from that comes from it if students are successful. So yes, the main goal, be successful, pass the NPTE. So it does sound like eventually, though, you started to realize that that 800 could be a possibility, that
Mhm.
just passing wasn't something that you could do, but just passing and doing a very good job getting the highest achievable score in the NPTE became a reality.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate. Two of my professors have actually done research on NPTE prep and stuff like that, and what exactly what factors really contribute to being successful in the long run. And so uh, having that professor on my team really helped, because she was like, "You're making these scores now on your PETs and your score builders exams and all this stuff. You really have a good chance." And so that was, I think, a huge part of anything, not just this, but is having people on your team like, "Hey,
Yeah,
you can do it. This sounds impossible. People rarely ever do it, but you really have a great shot, and we'll give you the tools to do it." And so that's just another. I'm going to probably shout out the PTA program and the PT program at A State a bunch, but they're, I mean, excellent instructors and people.
that's okay. You can go ahead and sing their praises from this platform. I'm totally okay with that. I know that, listen, PTA school is hard. I don't think, I mean, I know for a fact that it doesn't get near as much credit as what students really deserve. And honestly, faculty too. I mean, when you
Mhm.
look at the faculty members who teach in PTA programs, I mean, especially in like your community colleges who maybe not don't have the same um, structures, I guess, as maybe a university. Like it's a lot to get done in a 2-year period. Like your faculty are working very hard. So no, I absolutely agree. You should shout out to them, and that's great that they recognize that in you. And I think it's important that you also mentioned that they were in your corner. And I think that that's important for any student, even if they're not trying to like shoot for that 800, right? Having conversations with students, whether you're a clinical instructor or whether you are a faculty member or whether you are somebody else outside of the realm, having those discussions with students to help them believe that all of this is possible is very vital to that student. You've got to be kind of speaking life into that study process and that study program. And yes, you can do it. Yes, you have the capability. Yes, you have the tools to be successful. We just got to
Right.
implement it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, to speak more of the professors, my entire cohort passed. It was 100% pass rate across the board. So it was, yeah, it was great. They're great. Um, and going back to, 800 is more achievable than most people think. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a perfect score. It is on the scale, whatever the
Mhm.
NPTE uses, however that works, it is an 800, but it is not, I got all of the items correct. It's I think I've heard the number like 93% of the answers were answered correctly, which is still great. That's still
That's
good.
great. Yeah, that's very good.
It's just kind of an interesting mystique that's this perfect. You got all these questions right and all this stuff. Yeah, but yeah, and that's why I said that's something that a lot of students should aim for, because having the study regimen that leads up to getting that score really helps in the program, or not in the program, in the clinic, I should say. um, yeah, there is a definite divide between textbook and clinical based knowledge. Like
Mhm.
there's two different things. But if you know your anatomy, your phys, your pathology, all this stuff really well, it makes it a lot easier to go into the clinic and practice.
Right.
Because it's not
Mhm.
like your patient's not going to ask you quiz questions, but they're gonna have different signs, different symptoms, or you'll look at their chart and you'll see their CBC, and you can make a better judgment on that if you have that good foundation. Um, and so that's what was one of my motivations as well. Not only, okay, I can maybe do this 800 thing, but also I want to be a great clinician. I want to have the knowledge to help my patients out. And it almost feels at a point, if I don't know something, I'm kind of doing them a disservice. I could have studied harder, could have learned more. And so that's another thing that goes into that, and why. Um, that should be, of course, you aim high, and then you get the 600. It's easy, right? You aim for the 800, then you should be just fine on the board, passing wise.
Yeah. I like that you made that clarification about the 800. I do sometimes see that it's a perfect score,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I of course know that that's not it. It doesn't reflect a perfect score because there's well, number one, there's no way to know exactly how many you got right or wrong or anything like that. But it is the highest achieving score, right? So that's
yes,
still
yeah,
very commendable, and it can have like students do this. Like, yeah, you and I are talking today, but there are multiple students who achieve an 800, in a
yes.
year. So yes, it can be done. And I think that knowing that 800 isn't perfect should make people feel better, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yes, hopefully, yes.
thinking like, oh my gosh, they didn't miss even one single question on that. Like, that's that's asking a lot from
Yeah.
anybody to put themselves on that kind of a standard. But yeah, this is the highest achieving score that you can get on the NPTE.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a misnomer, but I just wanted to clarify that because again,
Yeah.
that does take away from some of like the like there's no way I can get every single question right.
Mhm.
You don't have to. So
No, exactly. Yeah. We're all human, right? Yeah.
exactly.
And many of
Um,
the questions that you take on the NPT are practice questions, and there's no way for you to know that either. So
yeah,
like
yeah,
some of the questions that you took are literally questions that they are trialing to see if they're going to put them on a future NPTE, right? So like
exactly.
there's no way that you as a student would know which ones are which. Those ones are like test questions
Hmm.
and may
Exactly.
never be used again or might be used again.
So there's yeah, there's like 40 that don't even count. That
Mhm.
exactly. So
Yeah. Okay, so if I'm a PTA and I'm
mhm.
listening, which I am a PTA, but I don't have to take my boards again. Thank
Yes,
goodness.
that's right.
Thank goodness
Yeah, yeah,
that's done and over with. Thank goodness. I mean, honestly, like, whew, I'd have to call you up and have you tutor me because
yeah.
it's been so long. It's funny because like yeah, I'm in PTA education, but I'm like, this has changed so much. My study book was like this, like even half of this. It's like that thin, like
Really.
when
Well, let
I
me. So
graduated.
I've
Do you
got.
have yours
Hold
close
on.
by?
So
I
I
wish
don't
I still
have.
had mine. I really
I don't
do.
have the PTA one, but the PTA PT one are about the same.
Yep.
This was what a
Yeah.
friend gave to me. They're. I mean,
Mhm.
they're.
Yeah, mine was
Yeah.
about a quarter of that, maybe. But that was 1,000 years ago too. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, and I mean, like even when I graduated, which was a long time ago, I'm totally dating myself here, but in 2004, having a study book was something that you did extra. Like it wasn't that wasn't the norm. Like students weren't just given a study book or anything like that. And now
Mhm.
a lot of this is integrated into PT and PTA programs. Like I don't know that every
Yeah.
PT and PTA program does it, but I know a lot of them do tie in some kind of a study resource or a study book or a study course into their curriculum just to make sure that students have as much, prep for the NPT as possible. So
Yes, and I'm glad we kind of got on that point because that can be a good segue into the tools to use.
yeah.
If you mentioned if you're a PTA student, maybe
Yeah, and I'm
coming
gonna
up.
I'm gonna get ready to take my boards. Like, build me a playbook. Like, where do I start?
Exactly.
Because I mean, this looks so different.
So the one that we used, that my program used, was Score Builders. And I have no affiliation. Either does our program. We have no affiliation with them. But I think it's important if you are a student and your program gives you a book, it can be Score Builders, Therapy Ed, whatever you use, that you're not just reading that book. Like you're not just going through and okay, today I'm going to read this and this and this, and then that's all you're doing. That's not efficient at all. If we're talking about our 80-20, right, Pareto's principle, it's 80% of the outcomes come from 20% of our inputs. So in this case, 80% of our correct answers, of our new learning that's occurring, is not coming from the textbook. It's coming from our flashcards, our practice exams. And so to walk someone through what I would do if I had this big old book is, again, not
Hmm.
read through it, but to start with practice exams. I'd go through I did tons of practice exams. That was the main thing I used, not just through Score Builders, but again through other companies. I would go through. If I had a question right that was on the back burner, I would go through the ones that I got wrong first. Go through. Why did I get it wrong? What's the rationale? And then go through every answer choice and see what would have made this one correct or this one correct. How could the question have been worded differently? And so that I would then go. I use a program called RimNote. It's a free program. Make some flashcards based on that. And from one question, you can get 4, 5, 6 different flashcards just based off of different points. So like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And so you're picking up all these different things. And then you set time aside and you look at those flashcards. Okay, so you can gather your context and the answers from the book, but I am not just going through and reading page to page. I never read the entire book, front to back. It wasn't anything like that. It was much more, I guess, strategic in that way.
Yeah.
And then once you go through your practice exams and stuff like that, and you're going through, you're figuring out why you got questions wrong, you're not only building a good foundation of knowledge, because you want that, but on the board you're not going to be able to answer every single question right just based off of just, oh yeah, I know that, I know this and this and this. You won't be able to do that because there's so much content. So then you start building test taking strategies, like how do I know what do they call it? It's like the question that might be right, but it's like a total, like,
I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of what.
Because it's usually 2 answer choices. It's like between 2. Like 2 of them are totally like random and weird, and then 2 of them. So it narrows down your answer choices, and it gives you a better chance at getting the answer correct. Improves your odds, if that makes sense. Because again, going back, you can't know everything on the NPTE. So to a point, you have to improve your ability to test take.
Yeah. I think sometimes students feel like we're trying to trick them, and that's not the case, but it's trying to boil down, like, what is the rightest answer? What is the most appropriate? So like when you see a question that has those 2 answers that you're like, they're both right, but which one is the most appropriate for that particular, so you do have to kind of narrow it down. And I can't think of what you're talking. I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of what it's called.
It's funny you bring up,
Most appropriate?
Trying to trick students. No, but instructors trying to trick students, because we had someone in our cohort who, on every single exam, our MSK instructor, coolest guy ever, and he'd usually give you a very straightforward question, but it would have some sort of twist.
Yeah.
Some sort of thing that would throw you off.
Yeah.
And every time this other guy, the student, would get out of the test taking room or whatever, and he'd be like, he tried to trick me, but I saw it. And then he ended up getting that one wrong because it was totally just a straightforward question.
Yeah, he was just wanting one answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny how we can get in our heads. We really can just get in our heads about this stuff. I always tell students whenever I'm giving any kind of test, quiz, or whatever, and I always say, listen, I'm not trying to trick you. I am not smart enough to trick you. Like, I want the right answer as much as you want the right answer. Because guess what? I have to grade all of it. So like, I'm certainly not trying to like throw anybody for some kind of a loop. But typically you just kind of have to go for like, what makes the most sense? Like, what is straightforward answer? Yeah.
And the boards, I mean, they are they obviously want people, they're taking the exam to be good clinicians, but it's more about safety and not necessarily how much you just know about everything. Because the board is a safety exam, more so than it is a, if you're taking your OCS, like how much do you know about the brachial plexus and all this other stuff?
Exactly.
So that's another thing to think about. The board wants safety, and it wants to protect the public. It's not talking about these very niche subjects. I've opened up the book, and it's not, I can't think of the one pop into my head, but if you
Maybe
see
it'll
like,
come to us by the end, huh?
yeah, if you're a student and you see just a completely absurd option, or you see similar options, that's how you know
Yeah.
in that case. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Just rule it out.
just rule it out.
So what other things did you do? So you've talked about your 80-20 rule, you've talked
Mhm.
about your study, your the way you studied and you took lots and lots of practice exams. What about things like active recall? And are there any other kind of like methods that you kind of embedded into your study habits?
Yeah. So the active recall came in. Um, there's also another thing. I'm trying to think of the concept. But anyways, the foundation starts with your ability to recall just pure definitions. What does this mean? And so that came into play with going back through incorrect answer choices. So
Mhm.
again, going back to this program called Rimnote, it's just a program to make flashcards and all this stuff. So when I had my incorrect answer, I'd go through and let's say it was the reason I got it wrong was I didn't know the norm for hemoglobin or whatever. And so I'd go through, and that is something that requires more active recall. It requires me just trying to remember a number, a
Mhm.
concept, right? And so that's how that would be used. So um, I wouldn't just use it, just active recall or just test taking or practice test. That's how they come together.
Mhm.
Is you get your active recall, your flashcards to lay the foundation. You keep going. You can get quite a ways with just flashcards, but then this other top of the pyramid
Yeah.
is practice exams and applying that information in the context of a patient scenario or a test question.
Yeah, love it. You know, I
Yeah.
always try to encourage students also, and this is obviously way before they take their NPTE, but when you walk out of class for the day, sit down, take 5-10 minutes and try to recall as much as you can from class. Like, what did I
Yes.
learn? What concepts did we go over? What things made sense? What things didn't make sense? And just kind of jot it down and then come back and fill it out later. That can also be a technique for kind of recalling like what you learned in class, because we know from that learning period pyramid, things that are verbally said to you, you're only going to remember about 10% of that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to have that combination of looking at the material, hearing the material, applying the material, all of those things combined is what helps solidify that content and that information. And that's why it's so important for students to be able to have access to all of those different parts of it. And it
Mhm.
makes it difficult sometimes if all you ever do is hear it, or if all you ever do is read it and you don't have all of those components to kind of make it work in your benefit. So, which is
Yes.
also why you said like you didn't sit down and just start reading the score builders book from front to back, right? Like
No.
nobody's
Yeah.
going to do that. But if you know what concept you need to review, and you can do the recall from class, you're like, okay, on this topic I remember this and this one I'm not real sure of, then I can go back and I can reference and kind of plug in and connect the dots from there if you need to. And honestly, I don't think any of those study books are intended to be read from front to back, and there's
No. And
many
they.
of them that are now very visual and less um, reading. So and we've already mentioned that neither one of us are like we're not receiving any kind of benefit from any study tool, by the way. So like, but there's many products out there now, and there's some that are more visual in the books that have very good colors and very good visual graphics and things like that, but have very few words compared to your score builders and your therapy ed who are very thick on words.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean that one's superior to the other. There's a benefit to potentially having both or having access to both. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I think it's hard for PT and PTA programs to say, oh, this is the one and only product that you should be using, because everybody learns different. Everybody's brain's different, right?
Exactly. And I think there is, maybe going into the types of learners, there is benefit in finding out what you learn from best. But most people, it's visual. Like if you think about the amount of real estate and stuff in our brain, and just that the body contributes to vision, and the process that goes into that. I mean, we are very visual creatures. And so I think there are people that benefit from more tactile, hands-on, of course, we're, psychomotorical stuff. That's great, and auditory and stuff like that. But visual, seeing the concept, seeing the muscle, how it originates and inserts, seeing the technique or whatever is very valuable. So yeah. And what I would do usually after class, I would spend, a little bit of time in the morning before class prepping. So I'm not just walking into the lecture completely blind.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're in class and they're presenting over something completely new, and that's the first time you're hearing it, you're not going to be able to answer any questions
Yeah.
or pose any questions that are meaningful in the lecture. And so
Mm-hmm.
then after that, spend an hour after class just reviewing. And then usually I could kind of just do a slow burn. I didn't have to, the day before the exam, just cram, cram, cram.
Right.
I was very relaxed. So it was
Yeah.
never a matter of dumping a whole bunch of time before the exam. I just was able to do incremental amounts of time. And that's something that I would, if you have the time, I mean, if you're a PTA student and you're taking this in October, you've got time. And so I would start again with a slow burn and not this cram, a couple weeks before the board or anything like that, because it also gives you, going into forgetting curves, if we want to get into that, it's your brain forgets, and it'll peak once you review the concept, and then it will drop off. And so we've got to, as students, let that drop off at a certain point and then let it come back. And each time you review the concept, that drop off becomes way less steep. And then it starts to kind of flatten out to where, of course, if you don't review the concept from 5 years from now, and it's something about like passive insufficiency, you're going to forget.
You're gonna
But
forget. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But if it's something like you're prepping for the board and you're
Mm-hmm.
reviewing these concepts and
Mm-hmm.
you're getting your forgetting curves to flatten out a little bit better,
Uh-huh.
that helps a bunch. But if you're just cramming, there's no real strategy to it. Your curves are gonna, you know
Yeah.
it's gonna be way less efficient.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I feel like there's so many things that we could touch on with this topic, but have you read the book Learning That Lasts by
I have not.
Thomas Alamander? I might be saying that wrong. Thomas, forgive me. If you're out there listening, which he's probably not, but he wrote a book. He's a PT and he teaches in a PT program, wrote a book called Learning That Lasts. And a lot of the concepts that you're talking about on here, which you probably didn't even know if you've never read his book, he specifically addresses a lot of these concepts. So I
Hmm.
recommend that book to all students. It's not big, it's super thin. You could read it in, if you really wanted to, you could get it done in an hour or two. Like it's a really small book,
Oh, really?
but
Okay.
it addresses these concepts that are very, very, these study concepts that are very, very applicable to allied health studying. Because you're going
Hmm.
to study different in a program like this, in a PT and a PTA program, than you're going to study if you are getting your degree in English, right? Like these are very different kind of like ways of learning that you would have to build a specific study repertoire. So if
Yes.
anybody's out there, I don't get anything from his book. I just find it to be an extremely helpful book. And so I highly recommend it to anybody listening. And it's so weird though, because like as you're talking, I'm like, all of these concepts are like some of the things that he talks about. So
Yeah.
you're like
Uh,
his protege.
the one that I read, the learning book I read, this was back. Um, it would have been the year that I was going into the PTA program. It's called Making It Stick by
Yep.
Peter C. Brown.
Mhm.
So
That's a good one too.
that's my learning Bible. That's where I reference a lot of that stuff. Um, but I'll have to, Learning That Lasts. I'll have to look into that.
Learning That Lasts. Yeah, check it out. I
Mm.
mean, you have a little time before school starts. So
Yeah. I need
before
to,
school restarts, right? Like you've still been,
exactly.
yeah, you've still been in school. So now you currently are a PTA. You're
Mhm.
working in a clinic. Um, how did how do you compare your study strategy to like your clinical strategy? Because you kind of made some like cross bridges here towards with the both of them. So like, can you give me an example of how some of the things that you've learned about how you study best and how you recall information has been helpful to you in the clinical setting?
Yeah. So um, this tool I keep referencing, RimNote, is something that I have on my work computer. It's not something I download. It's just in a web browser. You can pull it up. That will sync all of your stuff. But what I would do is, if I'm chart reviewing, of course, no HIPAA type identifiers would be used in my notes in RimNote. But I would look through, and if there was something that caught my attention, it's like, this patient has this specific range of motion, has this special test that's positive. Um, you know, what could be the thing that's causing that? And so usually it's pretty straightforward, but sometimes I'd see, I do go to different clinics. Sometimes I'd see a special test that I'm like, I have no idea what that is. So that's a great example when I would go and I've got different folders for the shoulder, the knee, the hip, the spine, and I'd go in, and if it's assessing meniscal, whatever, I'd go in. I would do my research on the special test, and then I'd have that just for later. So now I know the clinical significance of that to this patient. I know that, okay, this means whatever, X. And now I have this in my repertoire. So if I need to reference that again, I can type in Epley's, whatever, McMurray's, and then I know, okay, that's what that means. Those are ones that should be very obvious. But, that's an example.
Of course, yeah.
Another one would be like post-op protocols. So for the most part, with a rotator cuff, those are pretty straightforward. You're following phases of tissue healing, and you're loading those tissues appropriately at that phase. But sometimes it would be, there was one, it's called like a ladder jet procedure, something I'd never heard of before. And so that's when I go in, I make a new little, under my surgical procedures, whatever, I put that in. And I put in what exactly that involves, what tissues are involved, so that I could better explain that to the patient. So if they had a question like, so why does this hurt? Why is this painful for me? I was like, well, they went in, I think they go in, they were like, move the coracoid process. It's for shoulder subluxation, hypermobility. And so they go in and they purposely limit the shoulder mobility. So then I'm able to better explain that to the patient. I have a better background. And so I do that. I rinse and repeat that for any sort of things that I'm just not aware of. And I think as a clinician, that really gives you a better, it improves your ability to explain things to the patient. Of course, you're not reciting the exact procedure that's going on, but if they have questions, and like, why is this painful? Why can I not do this? When should I be healed? We don't have a magic ball, but it can kind of give you a better idea of when they should be getting to the point where you can do resistance, active range of motion, all this stuff. Because of course we can't remember all of the post-op protocols and just know every single procedure. So it's good to do your homework in that way, to be a better patient educator, and then to be able to better treat whatever surgery it is, or even if it's not a surgery, whatever condition it is.
Yeah, and I was going to actually ask you what you chose to do as a treating clinician now, when like you're not being held, and that you are being held accountable for your learning, but you're not having somebody like as a student, read these chapters or do these things ahead of class and things like that. So like how you keep yourself accountable, but it sounds like you already have that system kind of in process and embedded, where you just you recognize your gaps in your knowledge or what you're lacking, and then you're filling in the blanks, and then you kind of like build on that, right? Like you're almost keeping yourself like a toolbox or a data bank.
I was very fortunate in my very last clinical rotation. I had a great CI, and he was very into continuous learning, which everyone should be. But it's not common that you find a clinician, especially he's been treating 20 years, been treating for a long time. You see someone who's still trying to learn, because there's always stuff to learn. But anyways, he always encouraged me to go home after my 7 to 5 clinical rotation and
When
do
you're
homework.
tired.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, tough, but go home and do your homework. refresh on things. And it was very specific. It wasn't just, I'm going to pick this to go study, and it's just totally random. It's like, what am I seeing a lot of? What am I seeing a lot of and I'm uncomfortable treating? How can I, build a knowledge base that would help me treat that patient better? And so that definitely helped a lot, setting that up for my practice, because it's like, okay, that helped a ton, being in that rotation, constantly being um, refreshed on things. And by the way, the caveat, it wasn't like I was spending hours and hours after the rotation, and
No.
even now in the clinic, I'm not spending
Yeah.
hours. It's like I'll spend 10, 20, 30 minutes
Yeah.
looking at the thing. Once I've looked at it, I'll be in the clinic and I'll kind of pull up RimNote, and it's flashcards. So you're going through and you're reviewing. It's active recall.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting forgetting curves. So now I'm just trying to put all these tools together and try and what am I trying to get there? And trying to be just more well-rounded as a clinician,
Yeah.
like you said, filling in those knowledge gaps.
Yeah, and it sounds like the more that you're trying to basically eliminate those learning drop-offs, or those knowledge drop-offs, right? So like
Mhm.
the more you kind of keep touching on a specific subject, you're likely to keep that high on that instead of the drop off, right? So the drop off should become less and less each time. So then you should
Yes.
eventually kind of create that base knowledge that stays a little bit better. It's become embedded into your brain. It's not necessarily something you have to sit there and dig back up every single time.
Yeah,
Yeah, it becomes a
exactly.
little more natural. Yeah. So what has being an SPT, a student physical therapist, taught you as a treating PTA, and vice versa? Like, how does that work when you're a PTA that's treating, but you're also a student PT? Like, what are those two things teaching you about each other?
So that's a great question, because that was the coolest thing. That's what I was most excited for going to the first semester of PT school, because it's just gross anatomy. So we have that and a professional issues type course. So you're reviewing um, state guidelines, practice act, all that stuff, which was also good. But being able to go into class and see a cadaver and being able to cut it open and look at all these structures, it really makes you think about these different manual techniques that you're using. How effective are they really?
Yep.
That's a different can of worms. Um, and then thinking
We'll
about
have to
what
have a
is
different
actually
episode on that.
yeah, and thinking about like what is actually happening when you're doing that. Anyways, but just from the SPT perspective to PTA, it is awesome, really building a great anatomy foundation. Like, I'm able to go and see how the brachial plexus runs through the upper quarter. I'm able to see the prevertebral muscles, our
Mhm.
suboccipitals, um, getting into the thigh, the foot, all these. It helps with your palpation skills, all this different stuff with knowing your neurovasculature, all that things. Because I want to eventually go and dry needle, learn how to do that. So that's a great
Mhm.
foundation there. And then from PTA to SPT, since I'm a clinician, I know how this stuff will be relevant in the clinic.
Yeah.
Um, so knowing, again, kind of sticking with upper quarter and thoracic outlet, like, okay, I can see how the scalenes, the pec minor, the first rib clavicle, how that all could be sites of entrapment, irritation, because I can see it. I'm looking at it, I'm moving it
Yeah.
around. It's just
Yeah.
it goes back and forth, because you can think about why it's relevant, and then you can see it and then reapply it and have a better understanding as a clinician.
Yeah.
I wish gross anatomy was something that we could just take as a CEU. I don't know how that would work, but it would be
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my first semester as a PTA student. I was an aide in a PT clinic, so to me, like the only thing I really ever knew was outpatient physical therapy, and I was like, well,
Mhm.
this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like I'm going to work in
Yeah.
outpatient, and that first semester was all basic patient skills. It was like your vital signs and your transfers and like your gait training and a bunch of stuff that I didn't really ever see firsthand. Even though I was working at a
Yeah.
PT clinic, I was seeing much more high level patients, in
Hmm.
real time. So like to me, I was like, what do we have to learn all this stuff for?
Yeah, yeah.
And of course,
How is this
like,
relevant?
yeah, and I'm like, why are we going through all of this? And of course, here I am. 20 some years later, I've worked in acute care. I continue to work in
Hmm.
skilled nursing, and I'm like, oh yeah, like it's all applicable. Yeah. But like that first semester, I was like, I don't understand why we're doing all of this. Like,
Yeah, no, it's definitely like if you've only been an outpatient as an aide or whatever, we had a few people like that. They were like,
yeah,
"What are
you
we
mean I have
like?
to do
This is not
what?
what I." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also cool, just not from a musculoskeletal standpoint, but also being able to look at your thoracic cavity, peritoneum, and all this stuff. And when you go into acute, being able to better explain someone who's status post, whatever sort of
Yeah.
abdominal surgery. We see a ton of those here
Mhm.
in the Northeast Arkansas, and so it's again, it just goes back and forth. You improve your fundamental A&P, and then you're applying it. So it just goes back and forth. It's really cool.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So tell me a little bit about this setup because you went to PTA school exactly
Mhm.
where you're going to PT school. So tell me about
Yeah.
the program at Arkansas State and how this worked out so wonderfully for you.
Yeah, they've got a few really cool things going on. One of which is called their professional track health studies program. Um, so to give some background, going into college, I wanted to do like computer science, something just totally not tangential to physical therapy. Ended up having some life experiences with my family and kind of reflected on that and was like, okay, this is something I want to do. Anyways, I was playing a gig in downtown Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I get off
A
stage
gig on your
and
drums.
on the drums, yeah.
Hmm.
And I get down off stage, and the director of the PTA program, who I had no idea who that was at the time, came up to me and was talking about how she loved the facial expressions I was making and how I was playing and all that stuff. And I was like, "Thank you, thank you." And she was like, "Are you like still in high school, going to college?" And I would explain, "Oh, I'm going to college. I'm kind of thinking about doing physical therapy." It's like, "Great, okay." And so she kind of lured me in, and she had mentioned this health studies PTA thing. So to make a long story short, you do your first year, which is just getting your prerequisites for the PTA program. So A&P, physics, um, English, all that stuff. You go and do 1 year of the PTA program, and then you can either do it in 1 or 2 years that your bachelor's. You do a health studies program, so you're learning about quality improvement in healthcare, a lot of the administrative side of things, which is great if you want
Mhm.
to, instead of being a PT, you go and do admin. Anyway, so I did that in 1 year. So my undergrad was 3 years, and then in that process, I was able to work. Was doing full time online courses. So that's another thing. It was online, so I was able to be full time as a PTA, and then come home and do my classes. And then I was prepping for the GRE. And a year after graduating PTA, applied to PT, got in, and it's pretty seamless the way it works at A State because you see a lot of the same faculty, even if you didn't have them. So a lot of the PT professors, of course, I didn't have, but I'd run into them through the halls, or we had
Yeah.
again that collaboration between PTA PT had seen them, and so it's been really seamless, and it's been really cool uh, getting all that done at one university. So.
Now, did you guys have collaboration as PTA students? Like, did you ever have activities or events where you were able to like work together or anything like that?
Mhm. We're doing more of that now. We have what's called the Parkinson's boot camp, and so
Oh,
we'll invite Parkinson's patients around the community. It's hosted by a neuro outpatient clinic. I can't recall their name,
hmm.
um, but they'll get these Parkinson's patients, and then PT or SPT, SPTA, OT, and CODA students will all come together to help. Uh, put these fun games together for these Parkinson's patients and stuff like that. Um, and other than that, we also do like patient handling stuff. So, like I said, they as a PTA student, you learn that very early on. That's
Hmm.
important because you've got a clinical coming up your first year, right? Or your second semester. And so while we're in the weeds on gross anatomy, we have no idea what a gate belt is or what a transfer is. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
in that way, we're able to collaborate. and build, kind of bounce back and forth what we know, what we're going through, and stuff like that. And we're
Yeah,
also in the same building, like we're in this, like just across the hallway from each other.
that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I know a lot of PT and PT programs are doing a lot better at integrating students early on. I know that the PT and PTA students that I work with, we do an event where they get together. In the first half of the event, we simply just have them ask like kind of like speed dating questions like, what do you like to do? What do you like to do for fun? What are your
yeah,
favorite books? Like who do you follow on Instagram? All this kind of stuff. It's just like learning that you're all humans, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
everybody, we all have goals and dreams, and everybody came into physical therapy for their own personal reasons, and some of it was their own injury, some of them were family members, some of them had nothing to do with that, but there's all these different reasons why people come in, and I'm always it's always surprising to me that after every time we do this event, the PTA students come to me and they always say, I knew so much more than I thought I did. And I'm like, well, of course you did. Like I'm not going to throw you
Mhm.
into something where I knew you wouldn't be able to swim. But yeah, of course you did, and they were like, well, we just thought that they were going to be so much more advanced than us. And a lot of that
Yeah.
has to do with timing. Like you said, like in your first year of PT school, you're learning gross anatomy right now. You guys haven't even
Mhm.
gotten into some of that more detailed things, but in the PTA program, you're right away. Like I said,
Yeah.
you're transferring patients right away. You're like kind of diving right in. And that shows some of those different facets of what makes us very unique and very helpful to each other, right? Like we
Mhm.
need that blend of the way that the PT brain works and the way that the PT brain is kind of assessing a situation and the way that the PTA is kind of handling that situation. That's what makes it, a really good partnership.
And something that honestly I now take for granted, having gone to A State, but sometimes it goes both ways. PTs don't know what a PTA is capable of or what they know, or kind of what training they had. But at A State, it's very transparent. We
Yeah.
know that PTAs go through an intense first or in 1 year where you're learning essentially all that we have to know in 1 year, minus the evaluative stuff and all the detailed things. But PTA knows a lot, and sometimes if I've seen this before where a PT maybe didn't have that experience and they're not aware of what a PTA can do. That PTA relationship can be a little harder to foster.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a graduate from A State physical therapy, you've had that your entire 3 years, and that's really cool.
You're going to be ready to rock and roll, and you're going to be like doubly
Yeah.
ready to rock and roll. So why DPT? Like what made you decide to do that? Was that always the plan, or was it kind of, I mean, obviously it wasn't always the plan because you were thinking about something completely different, but like when
Yeah.
you came into PTA school, were you kind of like, oh, you know what, maybe I will keep going?
So I wasn't 100% sure on it, but I was like 85% sure because I
Mhm.
knew they had this really cool, almost like a fast track program. Like you can get your undergrad and your associates in PTA in 3 years
Mhm.
if you really want to hate yourself for 3 years, and then you can go and get your PT in the same place. And so I knew that the end game was PT, but after going through the PTA program, I was like, well, this is a really cool gig. Like I can do a lot. I didn't
Mhm.
realize how much you could do as a PTA. But ultimately, yeah, going back now, the figuring out the finances is a little strange because you, as a PTA, are missing out on 3 years of working full time, of being
Mhm.
a pay in. That sucks. It's a hard pill to swallow. But around here, we have really good opportunities to work on the weekends in patient rehab facilities and things like that.
Great.
So it
Yeah.
it becomes a lot more feasible. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other students that are kind of doing the same pathway as you that were previous students from Arkansas State that are coming back through? Like, do you see that happen frequently?
There's usually always like one or two in each
Okay.
PT cohort. Like this past cohort, I know there was at least one who graduated from Arkansas State, took a little bit
Mhm.
of a gap, and he went and did a ton of stuff. He's an amazing therapist, and then went back and graduated with his doctorate. And then there's one in my class or one other in my class who we had a ASU Mountain Home program. He did that, practiced for a few years, and then came back. So you do see it, about one or two that usually they come back and get it.
What kind of questions do you think a PTA should be asking themselves if they're considering going back to be a DPT? I mean, is there anything that you would say, really ask yourself these things before you take the jump?
Yeah, I mean, I'd ask yourself, what do you want out of, spending an extra 3 years on your education? For some people, if you've already been in it a long time and you're a PTA, and you enjoy having, you're treating more, there's less paperwork, there's less overhead, and to a degree, there's less responsibility because you're not having to supervise different therapists. You can still make great money. So you have to think about the financial part of it. Are you doing this to make more money? Because in that instance, maybe spending 3 more years in college is not the best way to do that. Especially, A-State is very affordable. It's about 60-ish thousand for the full 3 years, which is really
Wow.
good. If
Yeah.
you're a PTA and you're somewhere where it's 160,000 for 3 years,
Yeah.
then you have to think, is that really
Mhm.
worth it? Return on investment. Are you gonna
Yeah.
really in the long run make more money going the extra 3 years? So
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing is financially, is it a good investment? If your heart's in it, if you really want to get that extra education, then you can figure out, how do I want to make the financial part of it work? Can I find a good affordable school? Can I work on the weekends? Can I, move in? Can I find a roommate? Make it work in that way. I think the biggest things are finances, and then the
Mhm.
meaning you want out of the career. Yeah.
Now, you are a first generation college student, is that correct?
Mhm.
So,
Yes,
like,
ma'am.
what kind of things did you think about before you decided on college? When you were, considering college, what kind of questions did you ask yourself about debt, education, return on investment? Like, how do people kind of parse that information out?
So my biggest thing, and something that I'm sure my entire generation ruminates on before they decide to go to college, is the cost.
Mhm.
College is just continuing to get more expensive and things. But um, if you're going into a degree that, or going into a profession that requires a degree, such as physical therapy, and you are getting scholarships. So I was fortunate; I got really good scholarships. For me, it was a no-brainer to make that investment in time. It really was
Mhm.
more of an investment in time than it was money. And so,
Yeah.
in that instance, it's a great choice.
Mhm.
If you are fresh out of high school and you're like, I can't afford it, I don't have good scholarships, it may be better to, if, for instance, being a PTA, it's 2 years. It's still a big chunk of change, but you're out in 2 years, and now you're practicing as a clinician and making pretty decent money. And so you have to assess that. Do I want to spend all this time in college and not end up making that much money because of your student loan debt? So that's it. It really, a lot of it boils down, especially uh, for for people my age. Like, is this going to work? Is this going to
Mhm.
be a good
Yeah.
investment?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
your generation is definitely asking the why question, and your generation isn't settling for because that's the way it has always been. And
Yeah.
I applaud that. That's something that um, students want to know the why behind everything now, and that's okay. Like, we should be answering that why,
Yeah.
so
No,
we have
exactly.
to be prepared to kind of give the reasons why this is still a good career, this is still a worthy profession to go into. And I know there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of smack talk that happens about, like, especially, the cost of DPT education. It's like you said, it can be insane somewhere. It sounds like you're in a place that
Yes.
is very comfortable. I applaud you for applying for scholarships and getting those scholarships, but we're not ignoring or abandoning the fact that there are some very expensive programs out there, right? And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
becoming a PTA can be very worthwhile in your money, right? Like I only spent about $12,000 on my PTA education, and the same
Wow.
college 20 some years later, it's only about 17,000 now. So that's only an increase of
Pretty
about
good.
$4,000, right?
That's
So
really good.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a pretty good deal for an education where you're going to come out and you're going to make that kind of money way
Mm,
better, pretty quickly. But um scholarships, you mentioned that, and I think that students are sometimes afraid to touch it. They're like, I don't know, like what if I don't get it, or what if I'm not, the kind of student they're looking for. Just apply to scholarships. Find
yes.
them,
Yes.
apply for them, do it. I send students scholarship information all the time. If you're in a PT or a PTA program, you most likely already meet the GPA requirement for that scholarship because we hold such high
Mm,
standards. So just apply. What's the worst you can do is not have any additional money. You're not going to lose
yeah.
money from it.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
just apply for the scholarship.
And I went through my freshman year like a trio program, so it's like for first generation students, and they said the same exact thing. It's like just apply. Like you're gonna spend maybe 30 minutes an hour filling out all these applications, but there's no real like financial investment you're making to apply for these. Like just spend the time and apply. You'll thank yourself later because I'm currently debt free. I didn't have to pay anything for my tuition for PTA or my undergrad, and I'm then been able to save money to pay for my doctorate degree. So just apply.
There's a
Yeah.
pathway. You just got to be kind of willing
Yes.
to look around and see if you can find that pathway. So, and sometimes it takes slightly different route for everybody, but
Yeah.
don't discount yourself. Keep looking. So we're gonna play a game next.
All right.
So
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I want to play this game with you. I don't always play games with guests on the show, but I feel like it's appropriate. Like
Okay.
I think we'll have fun with this. So it's called Keep It, Cut It, or Cram, and this would be for studying, right? So you've already given us like your 800 playbook, right? So we're going to think about some study behavior. So I'm going to give you a prompt, and you're going to tell me if they should keep it, if they should pitch it and cut it, or if they should absolutely cram for that. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Let's
Sound
do it.
good. All right. So the first one, rereading the textbook.
Cut it. I mean, well, okay. Wait. Let's put some context onto it. If
Okay. All right.
you if you're reading it just like, oh, I'm just bored, I'm gonna read through my vitamins or whatever. I mean, that's just a complete that's a complete waste of time.
Okay.
Don't do that. If
Yeah.
you're rereading it to look at a question you missed on a practice exam, keep it. Absolutely
Keep
keep
it.
it.
Got
Keep it.
it. Making beautiful colored notes. Cut it.
Cut it. I mean, listen, I know a ton of people who do this and their notes look
You're gonna
fantastic.
get
And I'm
some
like,
hate mail now.
I am, yeah, because I one of our GA, the second one we had for the summer, she had these beautiful notes, and she's very smart.
Mhm.
I can't spend all that time. I'm also not very like artsy. So if I
Yeah.
could do that and it was very efficient, I would cut it
Yeah.
because you can easily type out flashcards and spend time reviewing those. They're not as
Mhm.
pretty. You can make
Yeah.
flashcards online look pretty, but I would cut that for sure.
Cut it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also highlighting, good grief. You should have seen my textbooks from PTA school. I don't know how much money I invested in highlighters, but it did not change anything. Let me tell you
Yeah,
that.
no.
So like there were whole like I think there was like sometimes like pages that the whole thing was highlighted. I'm like, I just gotta know all of it. I gotta know all of it.
Yeah.
So
And I
yeah,
would
cut that
say
part out too.
if you're someone who's going through a textbook, well, that's how we ended up going through school. You go through textbooks, but if you find something that you want to highlight, don't highlight it. Put it in a flashcard format because we need to bring that up later. And while you can reread it, what's better is if you form that into a question,
Mm,
and then you find different ways you can, um, build context around that question, and do that instead. It doesn't look nearly as pretty,
mhm.
but it can help you a little bit better.
I wish I had all these study tips when I was a student. So
Yeah.
I think I know what your answer is going to be on this one, but active recall.
Oh, keep it.
Keep it. Absolutely.
We gotta keep it. We gotta keep it.
We've got to keep it. Studying your strongest subject because it feels good.
Oh, I mean, if you need to pick me up, if you're going through cardiopulm and you're like, man, I just got to look at some muscles, I can definitely understand. But no, I'm gonna say, wait. So what is cram it? Redefine cram it for me as the third option.
So cram it would be useful, but only strategically. Like,
Okay, cram. I'm gonna say cram it because it can be strategic.
okay.
If you're in that last bout of studying, and
Yeah.
again, you're down to the weeds on COPD, that can get
Yeah.
real boring. So that's when you whip out the OIA and flashcards and just
There
kind of
you go.
refresh. You know.
hmm I used to give myself a treat. Like if I met my study goals, I would be like, okay, now I get a cappuccino, or I'd be like, now I
Yeah.
get to watch a TV show. Like I would always give myself like a treat afterwards that felt kind of like relaxing to my brain. So allow yourself treats from time to time. I'm gonna say keep that. Allow treats.
Yeah. I used to.
All right. What's that?
Oh no, I was saying I used to have like the mentality of like the worker and then the boss version of me. Like
Uh-huh.
the worker has got to do this stuff and study,
Uh-huh.
but then the boss needs to allow the worker some time to go to Starbucks. We have here in Arkansas Shadracks, some shaddies. So you got to allow yourself a reward for sure.
Allow yourself those rewards. Okay.
Yes.
Studying late into the night before an exam.
Uh, can be a cram it, can be strategic if we talked about the slow burn, if you're
Mhm.
spending time. If this
Mhm.
is your first time looking at the material the entire week, I'm gonna say you're better off just getting a good night's sleep because we know that our REM phases of sleep are where learning actually occurs. When you're looking at the material, the learning is not you're absorbing. You're getting that first layer of the learning, but you're not committing it to the hippocampus, the long term memory. So
Yeah.
once I got it,
Not
once I
not
got
too
it.
helpful. Yeah.
No.
I always tell students, I'm like, try not to study the day before your NPTE. Like you should be
Yeah.
done. You should be done studying. Like that day, you should do something that's beautiful and helpful to your
Mhm.
soul and kind to yourself and restful. And
Yes.
please don't study the day before your NPTE.
No,
Yeah.
the day
Just
before I was looking at I was staying with some friends and we were like jokingly looking through things, but we were running, we were just chilling out. It was
good.
nothing
Good.
serious.
Yeah. Yeah. Just do the slow burn. You're getting it
The slow
from
burn.
Dillinger right now. Like get the slow burn going and then you won't have to cram. That won't even be a word on your radar. You won't have to do any of that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to have you close us out with our plus point. So this is a tradition that I do on every show. Every guest has the opportunity to give me their plus point. And this is like an opportunity for you can stand on your soapbox and preach to the world on whatever topic you want to. Typically it's about physical therapy, but
Yeah.
you can start a fire under somebody. This is your moment. So what would you like to say to the audience?
Hmm. I would like to say I won't throw any shots out there or anything or start any fires, but I will say always strive to better yourself. Not only if you're thinking about being a student again and going back, or you're going to be a clinician. I think one way you can prevent, if you're thinking about in the long run, you can prevent burnout is through learning, and that sounds super boring and maybe even like midwit in a way, but like in my instance, when I first started, I had no idea what the heck to do. It was all new, but the more I learned, the more I got comfortable, the easier it was to treat patients. You'll always have the cruddy part, I would say like the work part of being a physical therapist, which is your documentation, fighting insurance, all that stuff. That will always be there. But
Mhm.
if you can get really good at the physical therapy part of it, the hard part becomes this documentation crud and authorizations and all this stuff. So my biggest thing is to continue learning and make yourself a well-rounded therapist. Make the physical therapy side easy so that you can battle this reimbursement crap and all that other good jazz.
I love it. I'm telling you what, I mean, you've hit on all the things that I love to preach about on this show. And yeah, I mean, combat burnout by continuously making yourself better. That's something
Mm.
that I kind of, preach from the mountaintops here on the show is that, If you're feeling unhappy in your job and you don't feel like you have any choice or any way to make changes or any autonomous, decisions, that's going to affect you. But the more you know, the more you learn, the more you connect yourself. That can be through your professional organization. That can be through different continuing education, different skills. It can be a various amount of things. But the more you continue to challenge yourself, it will return some sort of satisfaction in some way. So like
Absolutely.
you keep investing and you'll find that satisfaction. So I love that you
Absolutely.
brought that up. Thank you so much for your time. I mean,
Yes, ma'am,
you've
of
given
course.
us so many wise words. I am so excited to see where your future leads because yeah, you might be treating, but I have a feeling there's going to be people wanting to recruit you all over the United States to come and teach in their program eventually at some point when you're ready, or you could do whatever you want to do.
I
So
appreciate it. I
I'm
really
I'm
appreciate it. Thank you.
excited. The world is your oyster. I'm excited to see where you go next, Dillinger.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. Thanks for
Yeah,
having
and
me.
good luck with the remaining of PT school. I'm sure you could probably give us an update, right? Like,
I would love
mm,
to. I would love to.
yeah, you can hop on and give
Yeah.
us an update, and we can talk about
Yeah.
something else. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Of course. Sounds great.
All right. Before we go, I have to give a quick partnership spotlight for PTA Plus. If you're looking for an EMR that's built for where rehab is headed, not where it's been, take a look at Spry. Spry combines modern practice management with AI powered documentation, helping clinics streamline notes, improve productivity, and reduce administrative burden, and creates a better experience for both the clinicians and the patients. You can learn more about Spry through my partner page at sprypt.com/partner/Katie Sutton. And thank you again for listening to PTA Plus. We will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to PTA Plus, the podcast for PTAs by PTAs. Subscribe, follow us on social, and share the show. Elevate yourself. This show is for educational purposes only. No clinical decision making should be made from its content. See you next time.